Have you ever encountered a hurdle with launching or growing your business? Listen, there are two things that run a business, the back end and your soft skills.
Telling you right now, if these aren't in place, you'll lose clients and you'll lose money. You don't want that? Well, you're in the right place.
Hey, I'm Dana.
Hey, I'm Sarah.
We're your hosts of the Entrepreneur Encounter, and we're going to give you a behind-the-scenes glance into our businesses, give you genuine feedback, tips and tricks, plus occasionally bring on guests that care about supporting you to grow your business organically and nurturing authentic relationships. Are you ready?
Some of our important choices have a timeline. If we delay a decision, the opportunity is gone forever. Sometimes our doubts keep us from making a choice that involves change. Thus, an opportunity may be missed. This quote is from James E. Faust. He's a lawyer and politician.
Welcome back, entrepreneurs. A little recap about last week. We spoke on the importance of decision-making, how it affects our day-to-day, and why it's important. So if you haven't listened to that, we encourage you to go back an episode and listen. We'll have that linked in the show notes. But as we go about our day, we're faced with many decisions, whether it's professionally, personally, with our family, friends, even just simply going to the grocery store. But as James Faust said, if we delay a decision, that opportunity is gone. So today, we want to welcome our guest, Lara. She's a certified life coach, mom and wife. And as many of us know, there's ups and downs with trying to figure out everything, especially with not wanting to feel guilty. So, Lara, do you want to take a moment and kind of dive deeper into who you are and how you got into this space?
Yeah, you bet. Like Dana mentioned, I'm a certified life coach, and I help women figure out what their purpose is and how to make that happen. And I find that I'm so passionate about that because that's my story. So I was a stay-at-home mom for a hot minute when I realized that was not for me. And I do love to work. So that's where I kind of started my journey on like, how does that work? I do have 4 kids now. So I've always built a business around my family. I've got autistic kids in the mix of all of that. My youngest is 6 months old, all the way up to my autistic kid is 12 years old. And I find that my husband's a busy CPA. He works 80 plus hour a week. So a lot of the mental load falls on me. And that's what I've realized is that I love growing my business around my family. And I love being able to help women do the same. I find that decision-making is such an integral part of that. And that when we really understand how we're making decisions, everything else in our life becomes easier.
That's impressive. I feel like every time we have someone on, I'm like, oh, I resonate with that so much. Like it was meant to be.
Yeah, I love it.
But the ways that we implement it are very different.
Yes.
So I love helping entrepreneurs build businesses around their season of life, but I do that specifically and uniquely through the client experience and mapping out that journey through each phase, but make sure that it aligns with the phase of life you're in. I mean, that's kind of what we talked about before. When I first started my business, I was a single mom of 3. And so that season looked very different than me with a husband and 5 children. Some was a little more hectic, but like my meeting times are different. My types of how long my meetings are, like I have to be way more intentional with the things that I do. So I love that.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
So there's a variety of factors that can influence decision-making. How do you navigate those different influences, whether they're emotional, personal values? How do you implement those into your decision-making process?
I find that our values, good and bad, can affect every decision that we make. And it's important to get clear on what those values are. I find that for moms, or I guess for women, we have such strong values of being a hard worker, of being somebody that like shows up and serves. And what I have found is that oftentimes as women, that can be to our detriment, where we are always showing up for other people in our decisions, but then we forget to show up for ourselves. Same thing with like being a hard worker and really showing up at our businesses and really trying to kill it, but then we're giving so much to our business decisions that we forget the decisions of our lives and the values of our lives and being able to show up for our family. And so I find that like keeping all of these values intact, but looking at every area of our life and how our decisions are showing up is how we can be a more wholehearted person.
Is that why you believe that it's so hard for female entrepreneurs specifically to not only make goals, but to stick with them through like the roller coaster of emotions that is a day-to-day operation?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because as feminists as they come, and I find that although I want partnerships to happen in a marriage and women don't have to carry the mental load, that is still the reality of most women. And because that's the reality of most women and they're carrying such that mental load of their home life, their organization of their home, their kids' schedule, makes their decisions, it makes their goals so much harder to reach. And they feel so overwhelmed and burdened because of it. My goal is to help them see those patterns and see how they're making decisions so that reaching their goals don't have to feel so hard, or they don't have to sacrifice any of their home and family life in order to do that.
I have so many things. Because I'm constantly feeling overwhelmed and like I'm failing at something. I know I've mentioned it in probably about 3 episodes now, but Rhonda, and she did this speech about if I'm succeeding in one area, I'm failing in another. So like if I'm rocking my business and getting show notes done and blah, 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 then I'm missing someone's ballet practice or vice versa. If I'm showing up for bath time and playing at the park, well, then I'm blowing off a meeting with an editor. And I constantly fight that balance struggle. Like, as my husband will point out, I say lots of mean things to myself that I probably wouldn't say to anybody else because I'm like, well, I should be doing more. I should have that perfect social media life of, well, this CEO, she's meeting with people and running 2 businesses and doing this. And I'm like, I can barely get the laundry done that's sitting behind me because it wasn't done on time. So maybe this is personal, but like, how do you get comfortable with your tough decisions with the balancing act that you've done?
Yeah, I think, and I know that quote from Shonda Rhimes.
I listen to it all the time.
Yeah. I would say for me, I actually disagree. So,
Really?
I
Okay.
do. And I recognize that. And I feel like this could be a whole other podcast where we talk about like my thoughts around that because
Then we will have you back.
yeah, because what I found was that it wasn't that thought, and it may help some people, but that thought was actually really damaging to my heart. And I realized that every single time I felt like I was failing in some area, I was being meaner to myself. So where I kind of shifted and what I truly believe is I think about it not as like a balancing act, but like a web, where if you think of like a spider web and it has all these different spindles off of it, and I'm standing in the middle and like one spindle is my family, one spindle is my business, one spindle is my mental health and my volunteer in school and my church. All of those are integrated. So when I'm serving my family, I'm also serving my business because I'm learning specific skills that I'm taking into my business. Or when I'm in my business and I'm practicing communication and I'm showing up for a meeting, I'm also benefiting my children because they're learning work ethic. So I'm parenting, even though I'm spending time in my business, I'm still able to be that example. So for me, everything feels so integrated and more in harmony to where if one area of that web starts to fall for a time, everything else is still intact. So then I just go and rebuild that spindle. So for me, that's kind of like the thoughts and what feels more true and right for my heart, knowing that I can be in these areas and benefit all the things that I want, all those decisions that I need to make. They are all integrated together for the benefit of my home and family as well.
And that's what we were kind of talking about before we started recording, is that like your interpersonal skills and what you do is intertwined.
Completely.
You know, like whatever skills that you are using within your business, you are using in your personal life as well. So they do definitely interweb together.
Yeah. And that's where, for me personally, I don't like ever thinking about me failing. There is invitations to improve, but I don't see them necessarily as failures.
I've definitely learned to see it as more, I try to put a positive spin on everything. Please just call me Poppy from Trolls. It's a learning experience. So like I've run a business before, but I definitely treated it like a side hustle. I was an event planner and I do really well managing the chaos that is a wedding. But at the time, I did not do really well of understanding what it meant to run a business. So in one way, I did fail at that one, but I learned a lot of hard lessons so that when I launched my second business,
Yes.
I was so much better and I was much more prepared at what was needed, workflows. I even understood what systems should be in place to just make life easier and flow, as opposed to constantly remembering the 50,000 things that go into running a business and keeping customers properly communicated with.
Yeah.
So that's something I take from my business and I implement with my kids. Like we're constantly talking through, why did you make this choice? What could you have done better?
Yes.
There's more than one way to do something, but we still have to try to be efficient with it. We wanted to have fun, but you still have to be getting work done type thing. So I like that perspective.
See, you're not failing. It's all interwebs together. It's all interconnected.
I do wish I could do more, though. I
You're
am one of those,
succeeding.
I just can't sit still. I'm constantly like, if I have a slow moment, I'm like, all right, what could I be doing right now? What else can I do? So now we have journals and
that can be another podcast on like learning how to relax. I'm a pro at that.
It's so difficult because like I feel that we're constantly like making decisions. We're trying to figure out like, okay, what's the next thing to do? Instead of relaxing, because I do the same thing. It's hard for me to sit still. So on the weekends, I'm like, what can we do? If I'm not working, I'm trying to figure out what to do with the kids. So like you're constantly making these decisions. So for me, at least, it's hard for me to like quiet my brain until it's bedtime.
And the way I explain that to my clients is imagine you decide you want to become a stronger swimmer. And you're like, okay, I am going to swim the length of the ocean. And that's how I'm going to become a stronger swimmer. And you never reach the end of it. And you're going to die before you ever like become that stronger swimmer because you never get to the end. Versus I'm going to practice becoming a stronger swimmer. So I'm going to swim the length of this pool a few times. And then I'm going to get out. I'm going to take a break, catch my breath, and get back into the water. For me, and we'll probably talk about it in a minute, but I call like the decision-making cycle that I teach my clients is that without some kind of stopping point, without some kind of relaxation, you will eventually drown in your life. There has to be some kind of end point to where you step outside of the water and relax so that you can catch your breath to get back in the water. And that rest and relaxation is one of the most important skills of the decision-making process, I believe. It is a skill that you actually have to learn.
I think there was another episode that we talked about problem solving, because problem solving and decision making kind of go hand in hand, right? You have the steps, you have to look at it and just like break it down into, like you said, like instead of setting this high goal that you need to achieve, like break it down into smaller goals so it can help you make that decision better. Your analogy with the swimming, for me personally, I'm learning how to play the drums. I'm like, I aspire to be this drummer, but if I keep thinking like that, I'm going to keep messing up because, you got to start small and then get to where you want to be.
Totally.
For sure.
I mean, if you just played the drums forever, yeah, maybe you'd probably get better, but you'd also like have blisters and you'd be gushing blood out of your hands. But essentially, that's what we do as women. It's the same thing. Like we think, okay, I just reached this goal. What's next? What's next? What's next? Without ever actually stopping. And metaphorically speaking, we're like bleeding out of our hands.
Exactly. And I think like another thing too, like as moms, we're in this space of constantly making decisions for ourselves and for our kids and this and that. So there needs to be a time where we just like need to chill.
Yes. Like I said, that is an actual skill.
Yeah.
To actually learn how to chill is a skill that we have to practice.
I'm going to have to.
I think we need to do an episode on that because I definitely don't know how to do that.
Yes.
I'll be very transparent. There was a time I was sick and my husband ran a bath and I like 5 minutes in, I was like, I got to get out of here. I can't even sit in a bath for more than 5 minutes without feeling like I have to do something, even when I'm sick. It was driving me nuts. So future note, we should probably do an episode just on that skill for me to learn myself.
So It's a little bit of a tangent, but it's really cool. I just read this story about, I think it's called Kokomona or something like that. It's like this ultra race, 250 miles. I just read like the man that won this race just barely, he got to, I think it was mile like 68 to 70. Like that alone is unreal. But his whole body was falling apart. He didn't know if he was going to be able to make it. And he's like, I just have to go take a nap. And he slept for like 2 or 3 hours, even though he was like so far behind. He took a nap. He woke up and he was like, my fire's back. He ended up winning the race. He was like at the deadline. Like he came from, I think he was 68th place and he ended up winning the race. Like he made up so many miles. And so that was like the lesson. He's like, sometimes you just have to listen to your body and go to sleep.
That's awesome.
Then you wake up and your fire's back.
Such a real life tortoise in the hare.
Totally.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So kind of a fun story.
Okay. So rest and relaxation is a skill that you help teach. What are the other strategies that you like guide your clients through?
Yeah. So my decision-making cycle, I think of it as a cycle because, you know, if you think of like a menstrual cycle, for example, there is a very distinct process that you go through. And so when I think about it, the very first step is making the decision. The second step is implementation. The third step is to celebrate and evaluate. And the fourth step is to try again. So at the very first, like when you make the decision and at any point you can step out of the cycle. And so where I see with a lot of my clients is that so many women get stuck in indecision, like at the very beginning, because they're wanting to make the quote unquote right choice. They'll start researching, they'll start asking people's opinions, they'll start doing all kinds of things. And so they'll get stuck in that, not even making the decision because they're afraid it's the wrong one. So when we think about it in terms of a cycle, like you're just at some point in that cycle, so you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself to make the quote unquote right decision. So that's the first step, is just making the decision. The second step is to implement it. And I think this goes exactly along with what Sarah was saying, is like, let's figure out a plan. Let's take something really small and go and implement it. And I find that a lot of emotions show up at this spot because this is where you'll see your greatest weaknesses in the implementation. Because as you start moving forward, you're going to have the thought at some point, I don't know how to do this because you've never done it before. Otherwise, it would have been done. Or I love the quote that Sarah read at the beginning, doubt will keep us from making it. Like at some point, doubt will show up in the implementation. So you start learning your patterns. Like I know when I'm in an implementation phase because immediately I will question all of my life choices and want to go back to the decision because that's just easier. Keep making decisions over and over than actually having to do the uncomfortable work of implementation. So then when I'm in the implementation, it's usually for some set period. I'm taking skills that I have and going to work at it. And it is uncomfortable and hard because then you move to the third part. And this is where I practice the skill of relaxation in the celebrate and evaluate. Celebration is where I kind of lump together the relaxation, but it is a skill to learn how to celebrate ourselves and to really spend time being proud of the things that we've done. We as women are not taught how to do that. And that, I believe, is the most critical part of the decision-making cycle, because without being able to celebrate yourself, you spend time in shame, you step out of it and tell yourself that everything you did do wasn't good enough. And that's where your growth will stop every single time if you are not celebrating yourself. Whereas if you learn the skill of celebration and relaxation, it's almost like refueling your car to go through the cycle again. And then I spend time like with the evaluation on like, okay, what did I learn? Not just like what worked physically, but what was happening in my brain? What were the patterns of my brain? So I know next time I go through how to start planning for the obstacles, physical, mentally, and emotionally. And then that's where you move through to like trying again. I find that a lot of people will drop off in their decision-making cycle at the celebrate to evaluate if they don't actually relax. Because if you don't relax and you're burned out, then you don't want to move on to the try again. And especially for women where they're carrying the mental load of their home and family, I find that a lot of women are pushing so hard towards their goals that they've neglected their home life. So they step outside of the decision-making cycle in order to get caught back up on their home, in order to like answer the guilt and the neglect of like putting their family off. So then they kind of stall out in that decision-making process. And so that's where like learning healthy ways of setting goals and working through that, I think is really important. So that was a long answer to your very simple question.
I have so many questions. I feel like that. I feel called out.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I'm all like,
because I constantly feel like I'm behind on housework and like those motherly things. And every time I feel like I have a schedule or something that'll work, if I don't stick to it to an exact T, like it just all goes to crap. Then I'm frustrated and I feel like I have to redo it. I very rarely get to relax and like celebrate. Oh, I did the laundry today.
Yeah.
Or I got all the dishes done in one day type of thing. Whatever silliness it is. That's interesting. So many things to think about.
Yeah.
Talking about celebration, I know Dana and I try to encourage others in our group to like share wins, but I personally don't think I do that. But that's something to really consider, like even sharing it with yourself, like I won.
Totally.
Like I did this. How cool is this that I did this? You know what I mean? And it's so funny because I thought it was in our team chat. I'm like, oh, we got another subscriber, like to YouTube, right? So like, I kept saying like, we got another one. I thought that was pretty cool. So that was a win. Depending on who's in my circle, I tend to brag, I guess, but I don't think I do anything for myself per se, but I think it's time to do that.
I've definitely, as an entrepreneur, had to learn to open my mouth because I don't like attention. I hate being center of attention.
In the same way.
So, and that was with my last business. Like, no one knew what I was doing. When I booked a wedding, no one knew. I celebrated to myself internally, but I didn't share that. I didn't share what type of services I had, like what I was working on, if I was even proud of it. Like, no one had any idea. So I have learned to open my mouth and share and speak, and I will celebrate small wins, but it's definitely been something I had to learn to get comfortable with because I don't want to come across as boastful, because I did work with a coach at the beginning, like 2019. And I learned that I have a fear of being successful.
Most women do.
And I'm almost afraid to be the leader because then everyone's going to be looking at me. And then if I make a mistake,
Public.
well, now what? So
I think that's such a good point because most women that I work with have that fear. But men don't have that fear. Like,
it's very frustrating.
It is because that's like our internal programming, like the cultural programming, because then like we're in like the shadows. It's time for women to step up and claim what's rightfully theirs. And that's their power, their strength, their femininity. That's their brilliance. And the more we show that, we are always afraid of being too boastful or bragging or coming across too cocky. And that's where I really challenge my clients on like, okay, so what is the line? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, well, how do you know if someone's cocky? And they have to like stop and think about it. I'm like, okay, well, how do you know if somebody's confident? And their brain is like trips out. It's like, I don't know. It's like the buffering circle on your computer. You're like, I don't know how to answer that. Because most of us, it's such a vague line that we don't actually know. So we stay so far beyond it that we actually keep ourselves in the shadows out of fear of crossing that line. I say cross that line so you know where it is. At least experiment, get closer to that line, and then you'll know that you don't want to go there anymore. But we're so afraid to ever go there. I say, stand up, speak up, see what happens.
Oh, yeah.
Dana, I think that's the challenge that we are going to accept for this week and beyond, is to start bragging about ourselves. Well, yesterday I made a post. I was bragging that I played the drums. You know what I mean? Because I was very proud of myself for doing that. So I made a post and I was like, bam, like I did it. So I think that's something that we need to start doing more.
Yeah.
That's our challenge for this episode.
Oh, I love that.
There it is.
Yeah.
All of our audience, listeners, figure out where your line is and cross it and see how that feels.
Yeah. And what's so fascinating is that when you are surrounding yourself with healthy individuals, they want to celebrate you too. And they don't see it as bragging. They see it as like, you worked really hard. I know your story and I know how hard you've worked to accomplish this thing. And they celebrate with you. I think that's like the biggest thing, is that we all have this like junior high mentality of like being the mean girl. But that's because we were all unhealthy teenagers that were insecure about ourselves. But like, we're not there anymore. We can like have fun with each other and celebrate each other and be each other's cheerleader. And I think that's been one of the funnest things I've learned. So when I launched my podcast, so I have a podcast, it's almost a year old. It's called The Mom on Purpose, and I love it. And I was so excited. And I hate being the center of attention, Dana, just like you said, like it makes my skin crawl. But I realized like we celebrate weddings and we have bridal showers and we have baby showers. And I was pregnant at the time. I was like, you know what? I don't want a baby shower. I want a podcast shower. I was like, I am going to.
I love seeing every so often there's like a meme or something about a small business shower.
Yes.
I'm like, yes. Can someone throw me? I'm going to throw it for myself.
I threw it for myself.
A small business shower.
Totally.
Of all the things that I'm doing.
Yes. Well, and where I'm like online and most of my clients aren't local, it was the very first time that I was open with my family and friends of something I was doing. Because like you mentioned, Dana, most of them had no idea that I have this very successful business because I don't ever talk about it. And so it was so fun. I mean, we had a DJ, we had food, we had dancing, we had like this huge balloon arch that's like so outrageously not me. And it was amazing.
I want to see pictures.
Oh my gosh, I will send you pictures because it was gorgeous. I had a couple friends plan it and like even asking them to plan something for me. And I was still paying for all of it, but it was like so vulnerable to reach out to someone and be like, I want to celebrate me. Will you help me with that? And they showed up in like the biggest way.
That's awesome.
It was gorgeous. So I felt like that was my first time where I really walked the walk of like what I tell my clients to do. And I do that on small things, but to like go big and have so much fun. We seriously danced the night away. I have pictures of me. I'm like 7 months pregnant.
I'm super inspired by that.
My feet are huge.
That's awesome. Me too.
So I think you should do that.
I think that's a great place to end. So if our audience, our listeners, anyone in our Facebook group and our circles as we share this episode, because we're also going to be a part of this challenge of sharing our successes, and this is a very successful episode, how can they reach out to you, find you, work with you, all of those fun things?
Yeah. So my name is Lara Johnson, just Lara, johnsoncoaching.com. You can find me there. I'm also on Instagram, j.lara, Lara.johnson. Or you can always find me on my podcast, which is Mom on Purpose. And if you just search that on all of the podcasting platforms, you'll find it. I talk a lot about the decision-making process, the decision-making cycle, goal setting. I incorporate a lot of home and family life because as entrepreneurs, as women, that is an integral part of who we are. So we talk a lot about parenting strategies, how to manage your home so that you feel like those things are supporting you in your dreams and your purpose, not taking you away from it. So yeah, I would recommend listening to it. It's very good.
I will definitely continue checking it out. I started listening to an episode last week just to kind of get going.
Mm-hmm.
And another friend is launching a podcast too. It's a geeky one, so I'll share that one later. But I will definitely get that shared and put it in the show notes for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been an honor to be on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Remember, soft skills aren't just some fluffy buzzwords that get thrown around in the corporate world. They're the key to unlocking your full potential as a professional and a human being. Don't be afraid to invest in yourself and seek out opportunities to improve your soft skills. Sarah and I have a variety of workshops, online courses, and complimentary clarity calls for you to practice in real time with us. Links are always in the show notes. And be sure to join us next time for more insights, tips, and tricks to help you succeed in your entrepreneur encounter.